Hello, and welcome to an episode that talks about media coverage of crime and violence. I'm Swati Singh, a media professional for the last 10 years, specialized in mass communication. I have worked as a journalist with the Hindustan Times, Indian Express, Career Launchers, etc., and have also taught print and electronic media in various universities and colleges, including the Delhi University. Today, we shall be discussing the impact of media, that is, radio, television, print, and internet, on the masses with respect to violence and crimes. It has been duly noted that crime and violence is covered on large scale in media and therefore has led to problems. There are various debates on this issue, which we shall be discussing in great detail. So let's start by discussing the objectives of this episode. The objectives of this lesson include to understand the growing influence of media with respect to depiction and incitement to violence and crime, social responsibility of media while covering crime, the guidelines for reporting on violence by Press Council of India, repercussions of violating the guidelines, the laws on critically appraising the government on issues related to violence, personal opinion on issues, verifying facts and figures, non-publication of any type of graphical representation of violence. So, let's start by discussing why media's influence is increased in cases of crime and violence. One of the notable changes in our social environment in the 20th and 21st centuries has been the saturation of our culture and the daily lives by the mass media. In this new environment, radio, television, movies, videos, video games, cell phones, and computer networks have assumed central role in children's daily lives. Lately, it has become a common practice to link media for any inexplicable act of violence that are faced by the society. Like in recent court hearing of an incident where a teenager kidnapped and murdered his own sister brutally, influenced by a crime TV show. The judge suggested that exposure to violent content on television might provide a partial explanation for the crime. However, when we examine the nature of the evidence linking crime and media in such cases, the argument begins to unravel, which begs the question that what is at stake in blaming the media. Frankly speaking, most people who pass such comments often have a very little knowledge either of the individual cases or of the huge body of research into media violence. Yet, rumor and opinion quickly take on the status of truth and authority. However, this does not mean that watching violent material on any visual medium does not affect human mind, since the effect may differ from person to person, but one cannot rule out completely that violent depiction of crime and violence does not affect its viewers. There are several well-researched reports which document the impact of cinema and television violence on real-life tragedies. While freedom of media is extremely important and should be zealously guarded, at the same time, responsibility should coexist with freedom. Steps should therefore be taken to ensure that at least the more obviously harmful depiction of violence and crime on cinema is checked via censorship. While parental supervision and film certification rules help shield children to a large extent from objectionable content on television and films, but the internet, by its very nature, is beyond regulation. And therefore, there is no way to check the free availability of such harmful content on the internet. Hence, if we continue to turn a blind eye to this malice, soon a time will come when even those of us who consider themselves immune to such acts of violence will become one of its victims. Now, let's start by discussing the social responsibility of media while covering crime. There is a fine line between accuracy and balance, and in time of crisis, such as the one being witnessed in the two states, the distinction can get blurred, particularly given the environment of cutthroat competition in the media to get the story out first. In certain situations, what is accurate may not be balanced. There have been allegations against the media, in particular against local newspapers during the 2002 post-Godhra Gujarat riots, about the manner in which they reported the violence. According to the Press Council of India, norms of journalistic conduct, journalists are supposed to use their pen with circumspection and restraint. According to the Press Council of India, the role of media in such situations, for example, the Gujarat carnage, is to be peacemaker and not agitators, to be troubleshooters and not troublemakers. One may or may not agree with the PCT's description of journalists as peacemakers, but certainly they can't be troublemakers. However, no one can take away a journalist's right to chronicle events as they become history. It's part of their right to freedom of speech and expression, a fundamental right recognized under Article 19(1)(a) of the Indian Constitution. But it's equally true that this right is subject to several reasonable restrictions, including sovereignty and integrity of India, security of the state, and incitement to an offence under Article 19(2). The government's advisory also suggests what kind of shoots may or may not be used in television news coverage of the Kaveri water dispute and reminds the channels of their obligations under the Program Code, the Advertising Code, the Cable TV Network Regulation Act of 1995, and the relevant rules. This is a veiled threat. Governments have mostly eschewed from guiding the media in their coverage of social unrest, leaving it to the Supreme Court to intervene. Commenting on media coverage of violence by the Gujjar community for grant of scheduled tribe status, the Supreme Court had in 2009 emphasized the need for media responsibility. Advocating self-regulation, the court said any restrictions on the media should follow the least invasive approach. It said the right way would be to strike the correct balance between free speech and independence of the media. India does not follow the libertarian theory that allows unrestrained media freedom. What is followed here is the social responsibility theory that allows media freedom without any censorship, but expects them to take care of social responsibility and follow a set of professional code of conduct or self-regulation. Media can ignore their social responsibility only at the risk of eroding their credibility or inviting government's interference, which is undesirable, to say the least. Now let's talk about the guidelines for reporting on issues relating to communal violence are contained in the Norms for Journalistic Conduct 2010 edition. It was published by the Press Council of India. It is being argued that journalists are under a duty to promote communal peace and harmony in the society, or at the very least to not disturb the peace or provoke agitation. Therefore, they are under an obligation to report in such a manner which does not incite or aggravate tension between two communities. Keeping the above objective in mind, journalists should report on matters of communal violence in a manner which does not undermine the confidence of the public in the law and order machinery in the society. This, however, does not mean that the state cannot be criticized where due and where such comment is fair and balanced. The report should only be published once the facts are verified and corroborated. Sensitive and provocative headlines should be avoided. The guidelines also prohibit reporting of community-wise figures of victims of the communal riots. In 2002, the Press Council of India censored two leading Gujarat dailies for reporting on the communal Gujarat riots taking place during that period. The two newspapers indulged in publishing news which was against communal harmony and hence was censored by the Press Council of India. At the same time, the Press Council of India also appealed to the media to refrain from publishing or telecasting pictures of mangled corpses or any other photographic coverage which may create terror or revulsion or ignite communal passions among the people. Further, the Norms for Journalistic Conduct 2010 lay down guidelines for preventing journalist misconduct in relation to specific riots like the Ram Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid dispute in 1993, etc. Journalists should see to it that their reporting does not violate any of the norms for journalistic conduct laid down by the Press Council of India as well as relevant IPC provisions. When reporting on issues of communal violence, it should be taken care that the report should not incite one religion against the other, or make false uncorroborated allegations, or generally be of any nature as is likely to provoke further violence. Let's understand the legal repercussions of violating these guidelines. Well, the legal repercussions for violating these guidelines can be twofold. Most directly, action may be initiated by the Press Council of India. However, the PCT's jurisdiction is incredibly limited and only applies to the print media. Secondly, if any of the cases of communal violence is presently pending trailed in, such conduct may independently give rise to contempt for interfering in the administration of justice. The Press Council of India is the authority which regulates the print media in the country. It has laid down guidelines which the media needs to follow while reporting. If the guidelines are not followed, then the Council can initiate action against the offender, either on the receipt of the complaint or on its own motion. On being satisfied about the admissibility of complaint, the Council can initiate an inquiry through its inquiry committee. The Council can warn, admonish, or censor the newspaper or disapprove the conduct of the editor or the journalist, as the case may be. It may also direct the respondent newspaper to publish the contradiction of the complaint or a gist of the Council's decision in its forthcoming issue. Additionally, one news report may give rise to various wrongs and offences under different laws, as one action can have multiple effects. One of the most probable legal actions which may be commenced against such erring journalists is the contempt power, which is vested in the courts. Hence, if a news report interferes with the administration of justice, which may happen when a riot case is presently being tried in a court of law, then the journalist may be held guilty of contempt of the court. The only power which is granted to the Press Council of India is to warn or censor the violators. Thus, if the guidelines are breached, then the repercussions are a warning or an apology to be published by the violator. No criminal sanctions can be imposed by the Press Council. However, journalists could not be cavalier in their reporting, as they may be prosecuted under other substantive laws, such as contempt of court or the Indian Penal Code. If, for example, their writing leads to further incidents of rioting, communal tension, etc., it is relevant to keep in mind that unbalanced opinions, graphic reports, etc., can have the effect, even if unintended, on provoking or inciting people to violence. and this can lead to penalties under relevant penal laws. Also, let's talk about the laws on critically appraising the working of the government during violence. A journalist can be critical of government in case of riots. There is no law as such which prohibits the media from criticizing the government in situations of communal violence, subject to the reports being fair, balanced, etc. However, the government can impose prohibitory orders impacting the free movement of the journalist. There is no clear legal prohibition which prevents journalists from criticizing the government. However, the PCI guidelines on reporting in cases of communal violence serves as useful guidelines here. However, if in certain situations the state government may impose prohibitory orders under Section 144 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, impacting the right of the media to travel through a certain area affected by communal violence, thus impacting news reporting. In terms of the electronic media, it is also relevant to note that the news broadcast may be legally questioned under the Cable Television Network Rules 1994, whereby the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting acts as a regulator and has the mandate to issue orders calling for channels to scroll messages containing apologies or even banning the channels for a definite time frame. However, such power is exercised in an ad hoc and restrained manner, as in the past such actions have rarely been preferred against television news broadcasts. No clear law prohibits the criticism of the government during communal violence. However, the government may impose prohibitory orders by government to prohibit the free movement of the journalist, as discussed previously. Let's talk about the personal opinion regarding such issues of violence and crime. One can include their opinion in the same piece, but the opinion must be clearly demarcated from the facts. The facts on which the opinion is based should be verifiable. When the public reads an article, they should not be confused between the facts and the opinions based on the facts. The facts on the basis on which the opinion has been formed should be true and properly verified. The opinion formed obviously cannot be true or false. Only the facts should be correct. However, if the journalist is reporting on an issue of communal violence, then caution should be taken, while articulating an opinion also. The opinion should not be such as to incite people of a particular religion against another religion. It is pertinent to mention that on this issue, clear legal guidelines do not exist. When reporting on issues of communal violence, more precautions than normal need to be taken. Even though the facts may be true, the opinion should firstly be segregated from it, and secondly, it should not be scandalous or sensational, which may incite one religion against another. Let's understand the importance of verifying facts and figures. Well, there are no guidelines as such which lay down as to how and to what extent facts and figures must be checked by a journalist in issues relating to communal violence. The only precaution that should be taken by the media is that it should not exaggerate the facts. The information should not be presented out of context, as communal violence is a very sensitive matter. The facts should be verified from authorities and reliable sources, which should be quoted in the article or the writings. Let's understand the non-publication of any sort of graphical representation of the violence. No graphic information should be published at any point in time, including during a communal clash, even if it is verified as true, of violence. Although there is no law on this issue too, other than penal law regarding provoking enmity, obscenity, etc., such practices are generally discouraged by the government. Graphical information is likely to create friction between two religious groups and hence not encouraged. The Norms for Journalistic Conduct of 2010 edition by the Press Council of India lay down the guidelines which have to be followed by the press, including specific guidelines relating to the coverage of communal violence. It states that while reporting news with regard to communal rights, the media should refrain from publishing or telecasting pictures of mangled corpse or any other photographic coverage which may create terror or revulsion or ignite communal passion among people. Thus, graphic information should be avoided even if it's true. The media should generally avoid publishing information which provokes one religion against another or provides a distorted exaggeration or misleading version of the events. So let's conclude. The media are a principal pillar of democracy among the world. Media plays numerous roles in society, including molding of social opinions and perceptions of the specific events. In recent times, the media has taken a strong influential role, especially related to covering violence and crime. The media informs the public on matters of significance to it, meaning that a healthy and free media are critical to the working or functioning of democracy. But at the same time, it has to work responsibly and report fairly in order to ensure healthy journalism. In fact, media should work within the premise of law and constitution while reporting any case that is sensitive in nature. And now it's time for a quick recap. Today we discussed the various issues related to media and reporting of violence and crime. The fact that society is greatly influenced by media cannot be ignored, and therefore we also discussed about verifying facts before reporting, ensuring we work within the purview of the law. We also talked about laws to be followed while critically appraising government on issues of violence, and we learned how graphical depiction of violence should also be avoided. That is all we have for you today. Hope you enjoyed the session and learned about the media and its coverage of violence and crime. We shall soon return with another interesting episode on media ethics. Until then, farewell and namaskar.